That's another thing that you learn across 100 plus organizations is every organization has their issues. There is not a perfect one out there.
Yeah.
And perfection is unattainable in any form of a human dynamic. Work is no different.
What do you think holds people back from saying, because like when I do interviews for the current company I work out with, we're a pre-seed startup, I tell every candidate I talk to, like, hey, I just want to be honest about our environment. We're a pre-seed startup. It means we don't have a lot of resources. It means we're trying to build things while we're doing them. Like, it's a great place to work. You're going to meet some of the most wonderful people you know. But if you are coming here to expect every process to be fully baked out and all the answers to be given to you, this might not be an environment for you. And a lot of candidates are like, wow, I never thought anyone would say this or admit this. And I just wrote about how like 40% of managers admit to lying in an interview. Yeah. So what do you think is holding people back from being transparent and honest about what they are as an organization?
I think, again, it's going back to status quo. There's this like weird status quo mechanism with leadership that we're supposed to have it all together at all times. Like, we're all robots. And
Definitely
we're not.
Definitely
We're not robots.
I wish.
We are not robots. And we all would like working in a place where there were all robots. And so it's this weird dynamic where it's like the professional thing to do to not speak any like even neutral, no negative thoughts about your employer. Well, from a candidate's perspective, if you just heard 100% perfect things about a place, I don't know about you, but I would be highly suspect.
I was going to say, they could sniff
what
the
is
bullshit.
Happening.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what is happening and where are the holes? And now I'm going to like actually be asking you more questions because I'm concerned you're out of touch with reality. And so for me, it's like that those leaders that try to act all button up and like they have it all together, they're actually doing a disservice to every other person reporting to them and every other person in the organization because they're holding a standard up that does not exist. They're holding a status quo up that does not exist. That makes people that are looking up towards them and using them as role models feel like they can never attain it, which then becomes this like added mechanism. I don't really love imposter syndrome, but like it adds to that. It adds to the mechanism of like, well, I'm not perfect, so I can't do this. Newsflash, no leader is perfect. No company is perfect. And so it's this like old school professionalism, status quo BS that is, oh, every leader has to have it buttoned up at all the time. No, because they're not robots. And I think really great leaders are vulnerable and will say when they don't know things and will get help where they need. And they will encourage other people to do so on their teams. And what that does is there's another thing that I have on that piece, which really I've seen so much. When you have a bunch of button-up leaders, it creates way more silos. So if you're ever in an organization where you're like, why is it so siloed? It's because those leaders don't feel comfortable to be vulnerable, so they don't collaborate. They want to hoard information. They want to act like they've got it all together, but they create these really high silos that no one can get through. When you have leaders who are vulnerable and open, collaborating and saying, I need help, it has this amazing effect across the organization where you're able to see more cohesive leadership and collaboration. And what that allows not only those other people working with you to do, it allows the people working with you and for you to say, oh, I don't have to know it all. And I can go find someone who's an expert in my organization at this thing, seek their help, and they're going to do the same for me. And that creates these amazing bonds and partnerships in an organization that you would never have with buttoned up leadership.
I was just thinking, I've never thought of silos, like the creation of them and how they happen in an environment be due to like lack of vulnerability. I've never thought about it that way. So you just like added that idea in my head, and now I'm probably going to think about it all day long because you're so right. Like when you are afraid to collaborate, you're going to build up those walls. You're going to say like, I only have the answer. I'm not going to let anybody in. And that does really create a tough environment for even your team. Like your team wants to collaborate with other teams.
When you feel so like pressured all the time, like and your team feels so much pressure to be perfect, which doesn't exist. So you are putting really hard, really unattainable mechanisms on top of your team, whether you realize it or not. You might not say you have to be perfect, but them seeing you try to be perfect isn't helping. It's doing the same thing. So it's that mechanism of like, they're constantly under pressure. And what do we know about humans? None of us do our best work in that time. None of us do our best work when we
No.
feel pressured and we have to perform and we have to do this thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I mess this up, I'm screwed. Like, none of us do our best work then.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets into this fight, flight, and other mechanisms that we all do as humans. You have to pick one of those. And those types of fear-based, it's a fear-based thing because your fear of failing is huge. It's still fear-based. So when someone is a buttoned-up leader, it's still fear-based leadership.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to think about that for a while too.